The generator hummed outside my bedroom window at 3 in the morning, and I thanked God it was there because without it, my wife would be dead. I am Richard Jennings, and my wife Emma has stage 4 lung cancer. The oxygen concentrator keeping her alive required constant power, which became a problem when our neighborhood in Scottsdale, Arizona, started experiencing rolling blackouts during the brutal summer heat waves. The grid couldn't handle the demand, and our power company warned us outages could last up to 6 hours at a time. For most people, that meant discomfort and spoiled food. For us, it meant life or death. I spent $2,000 on a commercial-grade generator and had an electrician install a transfer switch so we could keep Emma's medical equipment running during outages. The generator sat on a concrete pad in our backyard, connected by a heavy-duty extension cord that ran through a specially cut hole in our garage wall to the transfer switch. Everything was up to code, inspected, and approved by the city. What I didn't count on was Brenda Whitmore. Brenda became president of our HOA, the Desert Springs Home Owners Association, about 6 months before Emma's diagnosis. She was 52 years old with that distinctive haircut that seems mandatory for women in her position, short and severely angled. She drove a white Lexus SUV with a bumper sticker that said, "I speak to managers for sport," which I thought was a joke until I met her. The first time she knocked on my door was on a Tuesday morning. I was exhausted from staying up with Emma, who had been having trouble breathing during the night despite the oxygen. I answered the door in sweatpants and an old college T-shirt. "Mr. Jennings," Brenda said without any greeting, "I'm here about the eyesore in your backyard." I blinked, trying to process what she was saying. "I'm sorry, what?" "The generator," she said, consulting a clipboard like she was a building inspector. "It's visible from the Henderson's second-floor window, and it's absolutely unacceptable." "My wife needs it for her medical equipment," I said, keeping my voice level despite my irritation. "Then you should have submitted an architectural modification request before installing it," Brenda replied. Per HOA Bylaws Section 12.4, any exterior modification requires board approval. "It's a medical necessity," I said. "And it's in my backyard, not even visible from the street. The Hendersons can see it, which means it affects property values," Brenda said. "You have 14 days to remove it or face fines of $100 per day." She handed me a violation notice and walked away before I could respond. I spent the next week fighting with the HOA. I submitted medical documentation from Emma's oncologist explaining why the generator was necessary. I cited the Fair Housing Act and Arizona state laws protecting medical equipment. I even got our lawyer to send a letter explaining that any attempt to force removal of life-sustaining medical equipment could result in legal action. The HOA board met, and according to the minutes they sent me, decided to table the discussion pending further review. I thought that meant they were backing down. I was wrong. The first major power outage hit on a Saturday afternoon in late June. The temperature outside was 112 degrees, and the grid simply gave up. Our power clicked off at 2:15, and I immediately went outside to start the generator. It roared to life, and within minutes, Emma's oxygen concentrator was humming again in our bedroom. I was sitting with Emma, reading to her from one of her favorite mystery novels when I heard shouting outside. I went to the window and saw Brenda Whitmore standing in my backyard, hands on her hips, glaring at the generator. I rushed outside. "What are you doing in my yard?" "This generator is in violation of HOA noise ordinances," she said. Section 18.2 clearly states that no homeowner shall create excessive noise that disturbs the peaceful enjoyment of neighboring properties. There's a power outage, I said, struggling to keep calm. People are running generators all over the neighborhood. Those generators are in compliance with proper setback requirements and architectural standards, Brenda said. Yours is not. Turn it off immediately. No, I said flatly. My wife's life depends on it. Then you'll be fined, Brenda said, making a note on her ever-present clipboard. $500 for violation of a standing order to remove the generator. She left, and I went back inside, my hands shaking with anger and fear. Emma was awake, looking at me with worried eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice weak. "Nothing," I lied. "Just HOA nonsense, don't worry about it." But I was worried. I started researching Arizona laws about HOAs and medical equipment. I found that while the Fair Housing Act should protect us, enforcement could take months or years of legal battles. We didn't have that kind of time. The power came back on at 7 that evening. I shut down the generator and went to bed hoping that Brenda would eventually see reason. 2 weeks later, another outage hit. This one was at night, just after 11. I was already in bed when the power died. I immediately got up and went outside in my pajamas to start the generator. The night air was still over 100 degrees, thick and oppressive. The generator started on the first pull. I stood there for a moment, making sure it was running smoothly, when I noticed something odd. The heavy-duty extension cord that connected the generator to the house looked different. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. Someone had cut it. Not frayed, not damaged by accident. Clean cuts like someone had used wire cutters. The cord was in 3 pieces, completely severed. My heart started pounding. Inside the house, Emma's oxygen concentrator was running on battery backup, which would last maybe 30 minutes. I ran to my truck and dug through my toolbox, looking for another extension cord. I had a regular one, not rated for the generator's output, but it would have to do. I connected everything and got the power running again with 10 minutes to spare on the concentrator's battery. Then I called the police. The Scottsdale police officer who arrived was a young guy named Martinez. He took a report and photographed the cut cord. "Any idea who might have done this?" he asked. "The HOA president has been harassing me about the generator," I said, "but I can't prove it was her." "Do you have security cameras?" "No," I said, kicking myself for not installing them sooner. Officer Martinez nodded sympathetically. "I'll file the report as vandalism and potential reckless endangerment, given the medical equipment situation. You might want to get cameras installed." He left, and I spent the rest of the night sitting in a lawn chair next to the generator, making sure nothing else happened. I ordered security cameras online at 3 in the morning and paid extra for next-day delivery. The cameras arrived Sunday afternoon. I installed 4 of them, covering every angle of the backyard and the generator. They connected to my phone and would send alerts for any motion. I also bought a heavy-duty replacement cord and a locking cord cover that bolted to both the generator and the garage wall. It wouldn't stop someone determined, but it would slow them down. Emma was getting worse. The heat was hard on her, and the stress of the situation wasn't helping. Her oxygen needs increased, and her oncologist warned me that we might need to consider hospice care soon. I wasn't ready for that conversation. On Tuesday, I got a certified letter from the HOA. Inside was a notice of a $5,000 fine for continued violation of architectural standards and noise ordinances. They also threatened to place a lien on my house if I didn't pay within 30 days. I called our lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen who specialized in HOA disputes. "They can't do this," she said after I explained the situation. "The Fair Housing Act is very clear. Medical equipment is protected. I'll file a response and include the police report about the vandalism." Will that stop them? I asked. It should, Patricia said. But HOA boards can be irrational, especially when someone like this Brenda is in charge. She sounds like she's on a power trip. What do I do in the meantime? Keep documenting everything. Those cameras were a good idea. And don't pay the fine. That would be admitting fault. The next power outage came on Thursday evening. I was ready this time, watching the cameras on my phone while I started the generator. Everything went smoothly. The generator ran for 4 hours until the power returned. Friday morning, I got another violation notice, this time for operating unapproved mechanical equipment during evening quiet hours. I didn't even respond. I just forwarded it to Patricia. That afternoon, while I was helping Emma to the bathroom, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the cameras. I checked the feed and felt my blood run cold. Brenda Whitmore was in my backyard, walking toward the generator with a pair of bolt cutters in her hands. I ran outside, my heart pounding. "What the hell are you doing?" Brenda jumped, dropping the bolt cutters. "This generator is in violation of HOA rules," she said, recovering quickly. "As HOA president, I have the authority to remove violations from properties." "You absolutely do not have that authority," I said, pulling out my phone. "And you're trespassing. I have you on camera with bolt cutters. You cut my cord during the last outage, didn't you?" "I did what was necessary to enforce HOA regulations," Brenda said, lifting her chin defiantly. "Your generator is a nuisance and a violation." "My generator keeps my wife alive," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "Do you understand that? Without power to her oxygen concentrator, she dies." "That's not my problem," Brenda said. "You should have followed proper procedures." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Get off my property, now, or I'm calling the police." "You can't speak to me that way," Brenda said. "I'm the HOA president." "I don't care if you're the president of the United States," I said. "Get out of my yard." Brenda grabbed her bolt cutters and stomped off, but not before saying, "You'll be hearing from our lawyer about this harassment." I immediately called Officer Martinez and sent him the camera footage. He called me back within an hour. "This is good footage," he said. Clear view of her face, clear view of the bolt cutters. Combined with the previous vandalism report, we have probable cause. I'm going to talk to my sergeant about bringing charges. "What kind of charges?" I asked. "Criminal trespassing, attempted vandalism, and possibly reckless endangerment if we can prove she cut the cord the first time. That last one is serious because of the medical equipment angle." "Thank you," I said, relief washing over me. "One more thing," Martinez said. "You might want to consider a restraining order. This woman seems unstable." I called Patricia and told her what happened. She was thrilled about the camera footage. "This changes everything," she said. "I'm going to file a motion for an emergency restraining order and include this footage. We'll also countersue the HOA for harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress." Things moved quickly after that. The restraining order was granted on Monday, prohibiting Brenda from coming within 100 feet of our property. The HOA's lawyer sent a nasty letter threatening to continue fines, but Patricia responded with an even nastier letter threatening a federal civil rights lawsuit under the Fair Housing Act. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. I was wrong again. On Wednesday night, another power outage hit. This was a big one, affecting most of Scottsdale. The power company estimated 6 to 8 hours before restoration. I started the generator and checked the cameras obsessively, worried that Brenda might violate the restraining order. For the first hour, everything was quiet. Emma was resting comfortably, and I was catching up on emails when my phone buzzed with a motion alert. But it wasn't Brenda on the camera. It was a man I'd never seen before, wearing dark clothes and a baseball cap. He approached the generator quickly and confidently, like he knew exactly what he was doing. I ran outside, but I was too late. He had already cut through the locking cord cover with some kind of power tool and was pulling the extension cord out of the generator. The man saw me coming and ran, jumping our back fence and disappearing into the darkness. The generator was still running, but without the cord connecting it to the house, it was useless. Inside, Emma's oxygen concentrator switched to battery backup. I had 30 minutes. I called 911 while frantically trying to reconnect the cord, but he'd cut it again, this time into smaller pieces. There was no way to repair it quickly. 911, what's your emergency? Someone just vandalized my medical equipment, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My wife has stage 4 cancer and needs an oxygen concentrator. The backup battery has about 25 minutes left. Sir, I'm dispatching officers now. What's your address? I gave her the address and explained the situation. She stayed on the line with me while I ran to my truck looking for another cord. I didn't have one. I'd used my spare after the first vandalism. Sir, is there a neighbor who might have an extension cord you could borrow? The dispatcher asked. I ran to the Hendersons' house next door and pounded on the door. Tom Henderson answered, looking annoyed. You have a heavy-duty extension cord, I gasped. Someone cut mine and my wife's oxygen is about to die. Tom's expression changed immediately. Come on. We ran to his garage, and he dug through bins until he found a cord. It wasn't rated for the generator's full output, but it would work temporarily. We ran back to my house and got everything connected with maybe 10 minutes to spare on the battery. Emma's oxygen concentrator kicked back on. I stood there, hands on my knees, trying to catch my breath and not have a panic attack. What the hell is going on? Tom asked. I explained the whole situation with Brenda and the HOA. Tom listened, his expression getting darker. Brenda put someone up to this, he said. That's insane. I don't know for sure, I said, but the timing is pretty suspicious. The police arrived, 3 cars this time. Officer Martinez was there, along with 2 other officers and a detective named Sarah Williams. I showed them the camera footage of the man cutting the cord. You recognize him? Detective Williams asked. Never seen him before, I said. Can you send me this footage? She asked. I sent it to her email while we talked. She was very interested in the previous incidents with Brenda. This has escalated quickly, she said. We're talking about multiple acts of vandalism targeting life-sustaining medical equipment. If we can connect Brenda Whitmore to tonight's incident, she's looking at serious felony charges. What kind of charges? I asked. Attempted second-degree murder, potentially, Detective Williams said. If you can prove someone knowingly cut power to life-sustaining medical equipment, that's essentially attempting to kill the person dependent on that equipment. I felt sick. I knew Brenda was on a power trip, but attempted murder? That seemed extreme. Then again, she knew Emma needed the oxygen to live. She'd been told explicitly multiple times. We'll investigate thoroughly, Detective Williams said. In the meantime, is there a way you can secure this generator better? I'll figure something out, I said. After the police left, Tom Henderson stayed and helped me build a makeshift cage around the generator using chain-link fencing panels from his garage. It wasn't pretty, but it would prevent someone from accessing the generator or cords easily. We padlocked it, and I felt slightly better. Thank you, I said to Tom. I really appreciate this. Emma's a good person, Tom said, and what Brenda's doing is evil. If you need anything, let me know. I went back inside and sat with Emma. She was awake, looking pale and tired. That was scary, she said softly. I know, I said, taking her hand, but it's okay now, we're safe. Richard, maybe we should just remove the generator, Emma said. I don't want you going to jail for hurting someone who's trying to mess with it. I'm not removing anything, I said firmly. You need it, and we have every right to have it. Brenda is the one who's going to jail, not me. The next morning, Detective Williams called me. We identified the man from your camera footage, she said. His name is Keith Morrison. He's Brenda Whitmore's brother-in-law. So she definitely put him up to it, I said. That's what it looks like. We picked up Morrison this morning and he's already talking. Says Brenda asked him to disable your generator as a favor. He claims he didn't know about the medical equipment. Is that going to get her off the hook? I asked. No, Detective Williams said. We have evidence she knew about your wife's condition. Multiple emails, letters from your attorney, the police reports. She can't claim ignorance. We're bringing her in this afternoon. I called Patricia with the update. She was ecstatic. This is exactly what we need, she said. I'm going to file an emergency motion to dissolve the HOA's fines and sanctions, and we're going to sue them for everything. The board knew about Emma's condition and continued to harass you anyway. That's bad faith on a massive scale. That afternoon, I watched from my window as police cars pulled up to Brenda's house, which was 6 doors down from ours. They walked her out in handcuffs. She was screaming something about her rights and calling her lawyer, but the officers just put her in the car and drove away. I felt no satisfaction, just exhaustion and relief that maybe this nightmare was ending. The next few days were a blur of legal activity. Patricia filed multiple motions against the HOA. The remaining board members, realizing how badly Brenda had exposed them to liability, immediately voted to rescind all fines and violations against me. They sent a formal letter of apology and offered to pay for the damaged extension cords. Patricia advised me not to accept anything yet. We're going for much more than a few extension cords, she said. Brenda was charged with conspiracy to commit reckless endangerment, criminal trespassing, and vandalism. Her brother-in-law Keith got similar charges. Both were released on bail, but Brenda's bail conditions included staying away from our entire neighborhood. The HOA's insurance company got involved and wanted to settle immediately. They offered $50,000 to make the lawsuit go away. We should take it, Patricia said. We could get more if we go to trial, but that could take years and trials are unpredictable. What do you think? I asked Emma. She was having a good day, alert and able to sit up in bed. Take it, she said. I don't want to spend whatever time I have left fighting these people. Use the money for something good. So we settled. The HOA paid $50,000, formally apologized, and agreed to amend their bylaws to explicitly allow medical equipment without architectural review. They also agreed to pay our legal fees, which were substantial. Brenda's criminal case moved forward. Her lawyer tried to argue that she didn't intend to harm anyone, that she was just enforcing HOA rules overzealously. The prosecutor wasn't buying it. I had to testify at a preliminary hearing in August. It was hard, sitting in that courtroom, talking about Emma's illness in front of strangers. But I did it because Brenda needed to face consequences. The prosecutor asked me to describe what happened during the incidents. On the first occasion, I discovered someone had cut the extension cord, powering my wife's oxygen concentrator, I said. I had to scramble to find a replacement cord while my wife's backup battery was running down. If I hadn't had a spare cord, she would have died. And you later obtained video evidence of who cut the cord? The prosecutor asked. Not the first time, but the second time, yes. My cameras caught Brenda Whitmore in my backyard with bolt cutters. She admitted on camera that she had been cutting the cords. What did she say exactly? She said she did what was necessary to enforce HOA regulations. When I told her the generator kept my wife alive, she said that wasn't her problem. I saw Brenda flinch at the defense table. Her lawyer whispered something to her urgently. The prosecutor also played the camera footage for the judge. Seeing it again made me angry all over again. Brenda, standing in my yard with bolt cutters, completely unconcerned that her actions could kill someone. The judge bound Brenda over for trial on all charges. Her lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor's initial offer was 3 years in prison. Brenda rejected it, apparently convinced she could win at trial. Meanwhile, Emma was declining. By September, she was sleeping most of the day. Hospice nurses came regularly, helping me keep her comfortable. We had good days and bad days, but the good days were becoming rarer. The generator ran almost constantly now because I was paranoid about power outages. I'd installed a whole house backup generator system using part of the settlement money, so Emma would never be at risk again. The HOA didn't say a word about it. Brenda's trial was scheduled for October, but Emma didn't make it that long. She passed away on September 28th, holding my hand with our daughter Jennifer there from California. It was peaceful as death from cancer can be. I was devastated but also relieved she wasn't suffering anymore. We held a small funeral, just family and close friends. Tom and Susan Henderson came. They'd been good neighbors through everything. The prosecutor called me a week after Emma's funeral. "I'm very sorry for your loss," she said. "I wanted to let you know that we're adding a charge of criminally negligent homicide to Brenda Whitmore's case." "What? How?" I asked. "Your wife's death can be partially attributed to the stress and health complications caused by Brenda's actions. Her oncologist will testify that the stress of the situation and the incidents where her oxygen was cut contributed to her decline. It's not a guaranteed conviction on that charge, but we think we have a case." "Do what you need to do," I said. I was too tired to care much about revenge anymore. Brenda's lawyer called me directly after that, which surprised me. He introduced himself as Robert Chen and said he was calling with Brenda's knowledge. "Mr. Jennings, I'm very sorry about your wife," he said. "I'm calling to see if you'd be willing to discuss a plea agreement." "That's up to the prosecutor, not me," I said. "The prosecutor has offered a deal, but it includes significant prison time. Mrs. Whitmore is willing to plead guilty to all charges if the prosecutor will recommend a sentence of 1 year in jail plus probation. She wanted me to ask if you would support that recommendation." I laughed bitterly. "My wife is dead, at least partially because of your client's actions, and she wants me to help her get a light sentence." "No, absolutely not. Mr. Jennings, I understand your anger, but Mrs. Whitmore is a first-time offender who made terrible decisions. A long prison sentence won't bring your wife back." "Nothing will bring my wife back," I said. "But maybe your client should have thought about consequences before she cut power to life-saving medical equipment multiple times, after being told exactly what would happen." "I had to ask," Chen said quietly. "Again, I'm sorry for your loss." He hung up and I sat there staring at my phone. Part of me felt guilty for not being more forgiving, but mostly I just felt empty. Emma was gone. Brenda going to prison wouldn't change that. The trial happened in November. I attended every day, sitting in the back of the courtroom. Jennifer came out from California to be with me. The prosecutor laid out a devastating case. She had the camera footage, the police reports, my testimony, and testimony from Emma's oncologist. She also had Keith Morrison, who had taken a plea deal and testified that Brenda had asked him to take care of that damn generator, and that she knew about Emma's medical needs. Brenda's defense was basically that she was just trying to enforce HOA rules and didn't really think anyone would die. Her lawyer argued that she had poor judgment but not criminal intent. The jury didn't buy it. They found her guilty on all counts after deliberating for less than 4 hours. The criminally negligent homicide charge stuck, which shocked me. I honestly thought that one was a stretch. Sentencing was scheduled for December. The prosecutor asked me if I wanted to give a victim impact statement. I wasn't sure I could handle it emotionally, but Jennifer encouraged me. Emma would want her story told, she said. She'd want people to understand what happened. So I wrote a statement. On the day of sentencing, I stood in front of the judge and read it. Your Honor, my wife Emma was one of the kindest people I've ever known. She taught elementary school for 30 years, touching hundreds of children's lives. When she was diagnosed with cancer, she faced it with courage and grace. She never complained, even when the pain was unbearable. All she wanted was to spend her remaining time with family and friends, making memories while she still could. Brenda Whitmore took that away from us. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Every violation notice, every threatening letter, every time she cut power to Emma's oxygen, it added stress and fear to Emma's final months. Instead of focusing on making memories, we spent those precious months fighting to keep Emma alive against someone who saw us as nothing more than an HOA violation. Emma's oncologist testified that stress can accelerate cancer progression. We'll never know for certain how much Brenda's harassment contributed to Emma's death, but we know it didn't help. We know that Emma's final months were filled with fear and anxiety that should never have existed. Brenda knew Emma needed that generator to live. She was told explicitly in writing multiple times. She cut the power anyway, not once but twice. She sent her brother-in-law to do it a third time. Each time Emma came close to death. Each time, I had to scramble to save her life while Brenda sat in her house, satisfied that she had enforced HOA rules. Your Honor, I don't say this lightly, but Brenda Whitmore is a danger to society. She became so obsessed with her petty power as HOA president that she was willing to let someone die rather than admit she was wrong. That's not poor judgment. That's something much darker. I ask that you sentence her to the maximum allowed by law. Not for revenge, but because people need to understand that you cannot torture someone to death over HOA violations without consequences. I sat down, my hands shaking. Jennifer squeezed my hand. Brenda's lawyer had her make a statement too. She stood up, looking much smaller than the imposing figure who used to stride around the neighborhood with her clipboard. Your Honor, I want to say how sorry I am for everything that happened, Brenda read from a prepared statement. I never intended for anyone to get hurt. I was just trying to do my job as HOA president and maintain property values for everyone in the neighborhood. I made terrible mistakes, and I take full responsibility. I'm sorry to Mr. Jennings and his daughter for their loss. It sounded hollow and rehearsed. The judge seemed to think so too, based on her expression. The judge took a brief recess to consider the sentence, then returned and addressed the courtroom. Mrs. Whitmore, I have reviewed all the evidence in this case, and I find your conduct to be truly reprehensible. You were informed repeatedly that your actions were endangering a human life. You were provided with medical documentation, legal warnings, and ultimately a restraining order. Despite all of this, you continued your campaign of harassment, even enlisting others to help you. The jury found that your actions contributed to Mrs. Jennings's death. While cancer was the primary cause, the stress and complications you caused accelerated her decline during the final months of her life. You stole time that Mr. Jennings and his family could never get back. All of this was over what? An HOA violation, a generator that you found aesthetically displeasing. The complete lack of proportionality in your response demonstrates a fundamental failure of character and judgment. On the charge of criminally negligent homicide, I sentence you to 5 years in the Arizona Department of Corrections. On the charges of conspiracy to commit reckless endangerment, criminal trespassing, and vandalism, I sentence you to concurrent terms of 2 years each. You will serve a minimum of 4 years before being eligible for parole. Brenda started crying. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder. I felt Jennifer relax next to me. Additionally, the judge continued, upon your release, you will be prohibited from serving on any HOA board or in any HOA leadership position for the rest of your life. This restriction will be part of your permanent record. The bailiff led Brenda away. She looked back once at the courtroom, her face streaked with tears, but I felt no sympathy for her. Outside the courthouse, the prosecutor found me. "Are you satisfied with the outcome?" she asked. "Nothing about this situation is satisfying," I said. "But yes, I think justice was served." For what it's worth, this case is going to change how HOAs operate in Arizona. There's already legislation being drafted to protect homeowners with medical equipment. Your wife's story is going to help a lot of people. That gave me some comfort. If Emma's death could prevent others from going through the same nightmare, then maybe it meant something. Jennifer stayed with me through the holidays. We packed up Emma's things together, donating her clothes and keeping the items that meant the most to us. I found the mystery novel I'd been reading to her the day Brenda first showed up in our backyard. I put it on a shelf, unable to throw it away. In January, the new HOA board, elected after the scandal, reached out to me. They wanted to rename the neighborhood park after Emma as an apology and a memorial. I agreed, thinking Emma would have liked that. She loved parks. The dedication ceremony was in February. They installed a plaque that read, "Emma Jennings Memorial Park, in memory of a beloved teacher and neighbor." May we always remember that compassion matters more than rules. Tom Henderson gave a speech about Emma and about the importance of community members standing up when they see injustice. He apologized for not doing more to stop Brenda earlier. "I saw the violation notices," he said. "I saw Brenda harassing Richard and Emma. I should have said something, done something. Instead, I worried about staying on Brenda's good side. I'm sorry for that. We all need to do better." Other neighbors came up to me after the ceremony, apologizing for not supporting us during the nightmare with Brenda. Many of them said they'd been afraid of Brenda targeting them if they spoke up. "She ruled through fear," Susan Henderson said. "We let her because it was easier than fighting." I'm so sorry. I accepted their apologies but couldn't help feeling bitter. If more people had spoken up, maybe things would have been different. Maybe Emma's last months would have been peaceful instead of stressful, but dwelling on what might have been wasn't healthy. I had to move forward. I sold the house in March. Too many bad memories. I moved to a small condo in Phoenix, closer to where Jennifer lived. I didn't need much space anymore. Before I left, I removed the generator and donated it to a nonprofit that provided medical equipment to low-income families. Someone else could use it to save a life. I kept the extension cords, though, the ones Brenda had cut. I stored them in a box in my new place, a reminder of what happened. The legislation the prosecutor mentioned passed in April. The Emma Jennings Medical Equipment Protection Act prohibited HOAs in Arizona from restricting or regulating medical equipment necessary for health and safety. It established significant fines for HOAs that violated the law and created a streamlined process for homeowners to fight back. The governor invited me to the signing ceremony. I stood behind her as she signed the bill, thinking about Emma and how she would have felt knowing that her story led to real change. "Your wife must have been an amazing person," the governor said to me after the ceremony. "She was," I said. "She really was." Brenda served 3.5 years before being paroled. I didn't follow her case closely after the sentencing. I heard through Tom Henderson, who still kept in touch, that she moved out of state after her release, somewhere in Nevada. She was apparently working as a cashier at a grocery store, a far cry from her days of ruling over the neighborhood with her clipboard. I didn't care what happened to her. She was irrelevant to my life now. What mattered was Emma's legacy. The park, the law, the hundreds of former students who reached out after her death to share how she'd impacted their lives. That was what I chose to focus on. 5 years after Emma's death, I started volunteering with a nonprofit that helped families dealing with HOA disputes. I used my experience to guide people through the process of fighting back against unreasonable boards. I helped dozens of families avoid what happened to us. One case particularly stood out. A family in Tucson was being fined because they had a wheelchair ramp for their disabled son. The HOA claimed it violated architectural standards. I connected them with Patricia Chen, who was now semi-famous for taking on HOA cases. We got the family protected under the Emma Jennings Act, and the HOA backed down immediately. "You're making a real difference," Patricia told me. Emma would be proud. I thought she was right. Emma always wanted to help people. In a way, she still was. I never stopped missing her. There were days when I'd see something funny and reach for my phone to text her before remembering she was gone. Days when I'd cook dinner and accidentally make enough for two. Days when the grief hit me so hard I could barely breathe. But there were also good days. Days when I remembered her laugh or the way she'd scrunch up her nose when she was thinking. Days when I visited the park and saw families playing, happy and safe. Days when I helped someone fight back against an abusive HOA and won. The generator cord incident, as I came to think of it, changed my life in ways I never expected. It took Emma from me far too soon, but it also opened my eyes to how many people suffer under petty tyrants who abuse tiny amounts of power. I made it my mission to fight back against that kind of abuse, wherever I found it. Not just in HOAs, but anywhere people used rules as weapons against the vulnerable. It wouldn't bring Emma back. Nothing would. But it gave my grief purpose, and some days that was enough to get me out of bed. 7 years after Emma's death, I was invited to speak at a legal conference about HOA reform. I told our story to a room full of lawyers and legislators. I talked about Brenda's obsession with rules over human lives. I talked about the fear Emma and I felt, never knowing if her oxygen would be cut off again. I talked about how broken the system was that allowed someone like Brenda to terrorize a dying woman. And I talked about the changes that came after, the law that bore Emma's name, the dozens of families it had protected, the shift in how HOAs operated in Arizona and beyond. My wife died fighting for the right to breathe, I concluded, but her death wasn't meaningless. Every family that's protected by the Emma Jennings Act, every person who doesn't have to fear their HOA cutting power to their medical equipment, that's Emma's legacy. That's something Brenda Whitmore and her clipboard could never take away. The standing ovation surprised me. I wasn't looking for applause. I was just telling the truth. Afterward, several people came up to share their own HOA horror stories. A man whose mother lost her house over unpaid fines for having the wrong color mailbox. A woman who was threatened with foreclosure because her garden gnomes violated aesthetic standards. Story after story of petty tyrants abusing power. I listened to all of them and gave advice where I could. I exchanged contact information with advocacy groups and lawyers working on HOA reform nationwide. The fight was bigger than just Arizona, bigger than just me and Emma. That night, alone in my hotel room, I looked at a picture of Emma on my phone. It was from before the cancer, when she was healthy and smiling, her eyes full of life. "I hope I'm doing right by you," I said to the picture. "I hope this is what you would have wanted." I like to think she'd be proud. She always stood up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. She always fought for what was right, even when it was hard. I was just trying to do the same. The generator cord that Brenda cut all those years ago, that moment of cruel petness, had rippled out in ways she never could have imagined. It sparked a legal reform movement. It changed lives. It gave meaning to Emma's death. And it taught me that sometimes the smallest acts of cruelty can have the biggest consequences. Brenda thought she was just enforcing HOA rules. She thought her authority as president gave her the right to harass us, to endanger Emma's life, to value property standards over human survival. She was wrong. The jury agreed. The judge agreed. The legislature agreed. And now, because of Emma, because of what we went through, thousands of families would never have to face the same nightmare. Medical equipment was protected. The law was clear. The Brendas of the world couldn't hurt people anymore, not without serious consequences. I wished Emma was here to see it, but in a way I felt like she was. Every time I helped a family fight back against an abusive HOA, every time the law protected someone vulnerable, Emma was there. Her compassion lived on. Her fight for what was right lived on. And that, I realized, was the best memorial I could give her. Not a park, though that was nice. Not a law, though that saved lives. But the commitment to keep fighting for people who needed help, to stand up to bullies and tyrants, to never let petty rules matter more than human lives. That was Emma's true legacy. And I would carry it forward for the rest of my life. Because in the end, Brenda Whitmore didn't just steal a generator cord. She thought she could steal Emma's final months of peace, could steal her dignity, could steal her life. And while she succeeded in causing pain and suffering, she failed in the bigger picture. Emma's story was told. Justice was served, laws were changed, lives were saved. And somewhere in Arizona, probably right now, a family with medical equipment was safe from HOA harassment because of what Emma endured. That had to count for something. That had to mean Emma's suffering wasn't for nothing. I chose to believe it did. I chose to believe she made a difference, even in death. And I would keep fighting to honor that difference for as long as I had breath in my body, because that's what Emma would have done. And that's what love looks like when the person you love is gone but their values remain. The generator hummed in my memory, a constant reminder of those dark days but also of the light that came after. Emma's light, still shining, still making the world a little bit better. Brenda Whitmore tried to cut that light off with her bolt cutters and her petty tyranny. She failed. And that failure, that complete and total defeat of cruelty by compassion, was the truest victory of all.